This is TWiT.
Finally, Sam, you have had time with both of the consoles that we've talked about today, or console families, let's say, the PS5 and the Xbox Series S and X. So with all of that experience, what's going on in your mind right now as you compare the two against each other? What strikes you about all the time you spent with both and how they compare?
I mean, I would start by saying both are impressive and both are a giant victory for AMD. AMD, like the last generation of consoles, was the exclusive supplier for both Xbox and PlayStation. They are running the SoC, that's their Zen 2 CPU architecture, and their RDNA 2 GPU architecture that's pushing both of these. And when I take a game like Dirt 5 or Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Watch Dogs Legion, which are cross-platform, they're on both consoles, and I put them side by side, the loading times are similar, which are quite fast. The performance is similar, which is right up there at 4K, 60 frames a second, depending on the game, with ray tracing turned on for Watch Dogs Legion. So they're both kicking butt if you have third-party games in mind, along with exclusive games. Now, exclusive games, Sony wins. Hands down in terms of new stuff this year, because you need a PlayStation 5 to play their stuff, and you don't need that to play Microsoft's. If you want to play Demon's Souls, which we only as members of the press got access to yesterday, you need a PlayStation 5. And I am writing our formal review of that right now, not this second, but it's right up there. I would call it as close to Super Mario 64 as we are getting for a hardware platform in 2020, meaning it is gorgeous. You can only play it on one thing, and it sells that sense of why you spent, $570 combined on a new console, $500 for the game, $500 for the console, $70 for the game. It's incredible. It is gorgeous. It is breathtaking. It's running at 60 frames a second while you are doing some of the most haunting, terrifying, difficult gaming of the year. It's not for the faint of heart. If you've been stressed out trying to get a console, maybe Demon's Souls is not the first thing you should play. But thankfully, there's also Astro's Playroom, which is this incredible showcase. We already... the earlier segment talked about how the controller feels. It's got this incredible rumble technology that goes all over the controller. It's like the Nintendo Joy-Con, but cranked up. But it's combined with a speaker in the controller, so all those little vibrations can be matched with sounds. So walking over ice can sound and feel different than walking over metal. It's this crazy, trippy thing that is very hard to explain without putting it in the hands. So Sony has that. But again, Xbox has this incredible library. I have been invested in Xbox for years. I have a bunch of last generation stuff. And when I put those games on Series X, they load faster, they benefit from quick resume, and they have a thing called auto HDR, meaning if you have a relatively new TV set with HDR, Dolby Vision, any of these luminance and color information that gets pumped up, you end up with older games looking more dramatic. There's a game called Geometry Wars 2, came out years ago. It looks kind of dinky, it's arcadey, but with auto HDR, the deeper blacks and the brighter brights make this sort of Robotron style arcade blast look next gen. And it costs nothing. It doesn't add any processing weight to the system. It just works. You put it on for an older Grand Theft Auto, for an older arcade game, whatever you want to talk about. Even Banjo-Kazooie from the N64 runs on my Series X with this fancy auto HDR thing and blows my mind. So it's a weird sort of juggling there. Basically, you can convince yourself if you buy either of these new systems that you made the right call, because each has its own interesting perk, and there's no clear, oh my God, this is definitely the winner. And I think that's great news for anyone who wants to spend $500 this year on a brand new console.
Oh, heck yeah. It's not a small price to entry necessarily, but people who are buying it obviously have good reason to be excited about it. One thing we talked about a little bit when we were talking with Elise, and I don't know that we've mentioned it much with the Xbox conversation, is kind of the media, using this as a media box. But back in the PS3 days, I had been out of gaming for years and years, and I got the PS3 primarily because I wanted a media box, and that's mostly what I used it for. PS4, I kind of transitioned and started playing a whole lot more games again. But so media experience is pretty important on these devices. They're not just used as gaming systems. They're also used as kind of like home entertainment center consoles, essentially. So in your experience, is one better than the other? Does one do it in a better, more more unique way, or what do you think there?
Well, the Xbox has been running on the same menu system for some time. Xbox One started with an awful menu interface that was hilariously targeted towards media apps, but it took forever to load them, and has evolved to just run faster and cleaner and have everything be one button away. I can hit this sort of Xbox home button, and it gives me these really nice shortcuts. And Series X and Series S both benefit from this. It is so easy and intuitive to jump from thing to thing, and not just to media apps, but friends lists, achievements, all these little things you might want to do with a living room box. Now, specifically with media apps, they run and load super fast. And I would say PlayStation 5, similar in terms of having its own dedicated media hub. When you look at the menu interface, the very top says games and media. And the latter just collects all of your media apps in a way that I think is smoother than PlayStation 4, which had sort of a TV and video hub kind of set off as its own app that took a little bit longer to load. So there's also less friction in that sense. But I will say the PlayStation 5 menu system is just not as elegant. There's always a couple of button presses more I have to do to get from thing to thing in PlayStation 5. And they seem really centered on gaming and on the one game you are playing. You tap the PlayStation button, it brings up these sort of cards, and they let you do things like start a multiplayer match or find information about trophies. But that's not necessarily what I want when I'm trying to play a game. I want to be able to quickly do things like see what my friends are doing, or jump to an app, or switch to a completely different game super fast with quick resume. Xbox lets me do that. PlayStation does not. Now, both are going to be faster than your like last generation Amazon Fire Stick by far. They both have the power and the speed to jump from app to app and to get things loading. But if you put a gun to my head, which would be very strange, I would say Xbox Series is a better media app device.
Nobody put a gun to Sam's head, please. Unless perhaps in VR. And that's one thing that I wanted to talk about here. You wrote about VR a little bit. It really seems like VR is going to take a back seat in this generation. I don't even know that I've necessarily heard any rumblings about VR on the Xbox side of things. On the Sony side of things, it sounds like, yeah, we still do VR. It supports the headset that you already have. I don't know. What are your thoughts there? Is this a generation where we're going to see some interesting VR offerings from these companies?
So Phil Spencer's been very blunt. No VR on Xbox. They don't see any point in promoting it and supporting it until somebody convinces them otherwise. I think it's going to take some real market movement. I think they looked at what PlayStation VR already did and said, we're not going to beat that. We're not going to put our engineers on that project. So PlayStation, on the other hand, has a VR system from PlayStation 4, and you have to order a special dongle. You can get it for free, at least, with shipping free and all that. But that's its own kind of snake tangle of getting that working on PlayStation 5. It works, but it's almost annoying enough to where I would suggest if you already have the VR headset and a PlayStation 4, just keep that and maybe put it in another room. But ultimately, Sony has hinted at a future of VR. And I imagine if they were to make something, it would be wireless and it would be phenomenal. It would be something that just feels completely different. If they have an engineering team working on that, it's going to be a complete line in the sand. The existing VR is sort of a last generation thing where there's a cable on your head and there's a camera that's kind of not perfect at tracking you, and there's these controllers that are fine but not amazing. I imagine a next one will be a completely wireless magical thing, or it's not happening at all. But either way, line in the sand, and whether that jump over the sand means a lot more VR that's super fancy or just none at all, that's the question mark. But in either case, it's not currently. There's nobody bullish about VR right now on either console, which to me is a bummer because these are powerful systems. They can run high frame rate stuff, which you need for having screens right up to your face. And that would be the time to say, hey, it was okay on PlayStation 4, but it's going to blow you away on PlayStation 5. But when you take the old VR and stick it onto PS5, exact same performance, exact same pixels, exact same loading times. There's little bits of jumps and increases on some of the more trying VR software on PSVR, but not a lot. So yeah, sorry, VR fans.
Yeah, that's a bummer, but I suppose we'll see. Maybe there will be some movement in the next couple of years to get excited about, which ties into kind of my last question here. Based on your experience with both sides of the coin, which system has you the most excited about its long-term potential, about what we're going to be talking about 5 years down the line? Obviously, you can't see into the future, but based on what you've experienced so far, does either system have you going like, I'm really, really curious to see where this lands 5 years from now?
Well, because AMD locked down the specs quite similarly on both consoles, we have yet to see how very specific differences have played out. We don't have any software this year that shows. Xbox has said very loudly that they have the full RDNA 2 architecture power on their chipset, while Sony has kind of tweaked their stuff into an emphasis on different aspects. Long story short, it seems like PlayStation 5 has faster memory loading and Xbox Series X has faster graphics performance. So where does that really blast off? Do we get infinite worlds on PlayStation 5 that we don't get on Xbox because the loading on PlayStation 5 works so much better? Do we get just an incredible tour de force of ray tracing on Xbox that can't happen on PlayStation 5? That is not currently clear. That being said, both sides have incredible first-party potential coming forward. Xbox has been buying up studios. They've been putting together games in secret for years. We hear rumors about a bunch. We've already seen reveals of a new Forza and a new Fable and Halo Infinite. Maybe it'll be good. I'd like for it to be, but that's been sort of a woe-filled development cycle. We don't know. PlayStation, meanwhile, we've seen teases of Gran Turismo, Ratchet and Clank, God of War. So essentially, both camps have war chests full of future games, and both pieces of hardware have the power to run them in ways that will blow us away. And Demon's Souls, to me, is a clear sign that when a game is focused on a single platform and is pounding away at these special system architecture things, especially that high-speed memory, that we're going to see special things from both sides. So really, it's going to be kind of a console war thing. Do you like those Microsoft exclusives? Do you like those Sony exclusives? Then you kind of want to go with either of those sides and then really enjoy the third-party fruits in between. I got to add, though, Microsoft has done something clever with Series S. Now, I said it has some issues in terms of being the ultimate purchase, but let's not forget, the Nintendo Switch still costs $300 for its home version. Now, that lets you also take it portably, but $300 for a Switch versus $300 for Series S, it's not even a question of which runs 3D games better. You can take Doom on Switch and Doom on Series S. Oh my God, you have a much better playing time. And if that $300 mark matters for having really cool games that you and your teens want to play, if you got teens at the house and you want to have a Fortnite box, Series S. It's stuff like that I think makes Microsoft's future interesting, because they essentially get everybody in and they're all playing at same performing level, whether they're buying the most expensive or least expensive. PlayStation doesn't have that. And Xbox Game Pass is very exciting to me, because if all of your friends are subscribing to this affordable monthly service, you all have the same multiplayer games all pre-installed, like a new Tetris or all of the Halo stuff or all the Forza stuff. I've got nephews. I want to play multiplayer games with them. Game Pass lets me do that with them in ways that PlayStation 5 does not match, even though it does offer some PlayStation Plus sort of things. So that, to me, the services half is going to be the conversation we have going forward, because with Xbox, they want you on the cloud potentially. Maybe you don't even buy the box. They want you to play Xbox no matter what. And while the shiny box is interesting this week and all of the pre-orders and all the people lining up to buy stuff, it's really that sense of services, of Netflix style gaming, that's going to drive the conversation going forward. And if Xbox wins on that account and gets more people buying and playing on Xbox, no matter what device they purchase, and that means I have more people to play games against, that could be the thing that turns the tide more than processing exclusivity.